Toda rabba. So open up to the Sfirat HaOmer section of your Siddur. It's on page 356. And yesterday we mentioned the bracha. Here it is, the preamble, the sentence introducing Sfirat HaOmer. I think I might have mentioned it. Some people, thank you so much. This is great. Thank you so much. Perfect. Some people say this before every mitzvah. The Shem Yichud Kuch Abrichu Shchinte, to unify the Holy One, blessed be He, in His divine presence. This is a Kabbalistic idea that there are two revelations of God. One which is called HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and one which is called HaShechina. It's actually male and female, and so you want them to get married. Unification. So every mitzvah we do, we're connecting up the revelation of God, which is maybe hidden and distant from the world. And when we do a mitzvah, we're bringing the godliness into the world, and it's unified with its more hidden revelation, the revealed revelation and the hidden revelation. Whatever it is, we say we're doing this mitzvah b'dechilu u'chimu, with reverence and love. I'm on page 356. To unify the name Yud-K and Vav-K. The name of God, the classic tetragrammaton, 4 letters, name of God, unique to the Jewish people, is Yud, and then a Hey, and then a Vav, and then a Hey. Split it in two. The first 2 letters are Yud and Hey, and the second 2 letters are Vav and Hey. And similar to what we said, of the 2 aspects of God, the more revealed and the more hidden, so these are associated with the 2 parts of the divine name, the first 2 letters and the second 2 letters. It's like the divine name gets split up in half. Yud-K is the first half, Vav-K is the second half, and we want to unify them. B'yichud hashlim, in perfect unity. B'shem kol Yisrael. When we do a mitzvah, we're not just doing it on our behalf, we're doing it on behalf of all of the Jewish people. So this is somehow became popular, specifically regarding Sfirat HaOmer. I think Sfirat HaOmer is a unique mitzvah. As I said, some Hasidim and Kabbalists, they say this before every mitzvah, before they put on the talin, before they put on the tefillin. In the Sephardi shuls, they say it as part of the Siddur. And they mention to unify the names of God. So here we have it, at least before Sfirat HaOmer. And then we say a second part. The first big paragraph. I am prepared and ready to fulfill the positive commandment. Oh, well, get rid of this chill here a little bit. I'm ready prepared and ready to fulfill the positive commandment of counting the Omer, as it is written in the Torah. All right, we discussed this yesterday. Is it a positive commandment from the Torah, or is it only rabbinic? But this idea, if you take a look, there's a custom to say it before we start Psukei de Zimra. If you look on page 104, keep your fingers and keep the page, and just for a second take a look at the beginning of Psukei de Zimra on page 104. It's not the beginning of the whole Psukei de Zimra, but the official Psukei de Zimra starts with a bracha before, and that's called Baruch She'amar. And before that you have, I hereby prepare my mouth. Areini mezamen et pi. It's like hineni muchan u'mezuman. I am prepared and ready. So here I prepare my mouth to thank, praise, and laud my Creator. What for? So some people just stop that because they don't want to get too Kabbalistic. But as you can see, here too we say, L'shem yichud kudsha brichu ushchinte, to you, for the unification of the Holy One, blessed be He, in His divine presence, through that which is hidden and concealed in the name of all of Israel. So we have a similar introduction to the mitzvah of Psukei de Zimra, like we have to the mitzvah of Sfirat HaOmer. Okay? Yes?
Why my Siddur don't have this? mean, he goes straight to the Allah.
Baruch Shah. What do you mean? Oh, it's Sephardi. Sephardim don't usually say that. They have a different introduction.
No, mine is Ashkenazi. He goes straight to the
Baruch Atah Hashem, say to the bracha.
Yes.
Well, like I said, it's a preamble. It's not obligatory. And some people say it for every mitzvah. And so I guess they figured, if I'm not going to say it at every mitzvah, why should I say it now for Sfirat HaOmer? You should be consistent. You should be consistent. So if you're not going to say it before, you don't have it before the tefillin, you don't have it before Birkat HaMazon, you don't have it before the tefillah, why should I have it before Sfirat HaOmer? It makes sense. It's a little bit strange that we have it only or primarily for this mitzvah. But maybe that's why they leave it out of your Siddur. In any case, the reason why I'm showing you this is not because I'm going to teach you to be a Kabbalist. At the proper time, perhaps, we can move on to that level of depth. But first, we're just learning the basics. So, but what it does say in the Siddur, and this is pretty universal, after the bracha, we have the formulation for each and every day. Hayom, Yom Echad, LaOmer. Go back to the Sfirat HaOmer. Go back to the Sfirat HaOmer on page 356. And so in English, it just says today is the fifth day of the Omer. Today is the sixth day of the Omer. But in Hebrew, look on page 357, after the day, it says, you see there's more Hebrew words. Hayom Yom Echad LaOmer. And then what does it say? Chesed shebechesed. And then Yom Sheni, and then day number 2, Gvura shebechesed. Day number 3, Tiferet shebechesed. Day number 4, 5, 6, 7. Finally we get to Malchut shebechesed. So we have an entire week, 7 days, and they're all considered to be part of the week of Chesed. But within the week of Chesed, you have that in your Siddur, right? You have those names of Sfirot in your Siddur. Have you heard of these Sfirot before? You know what I'm talking about? Can you say them off by heart?
No, by heart,
no. So how many Sfirot are there? And what are the Sfirot? 10 Sfirot! But we only have 7 weeks. So what do?
We join some.
No, we don't join any. No, it's okay. We don't join anything. There's a difference between the first 3 Sfirot and the last 7 Sfirot. There's this division. But what are Sfirot in the first place? What are we talking about?
We're talking about the tree of life.
What does that mean? What does that mean, the tree of life in Kabbalah? Very good, very good.
Emanations of lights that Hashem sends to the earth.
Good. So the classic Kabbalistic books teach that God wants to influence the world. Page 357, yeah. God wants to influence the world. He did it in 10 ways. He chose to divide up his influence into 10 elements, you could call it that way. 10 ways in which God reveals himself to us. And those are called Sfirot. Sfirah can mean a number, can mean a count, can mean some kind of a realm. The way we're describing it, it means it's a mode of activity. It's a mode of performance. So God shows himself to us, to the world, in 10 ways. Those are the 10 Sfirot. But the Hasidim, and based on some streams of Kabbalah, they said, you know what? It's not only that there's 10 ways of Hashem, but these 10 ways are actually, they're part of the essence of the world. The world works in these 10 ways, and included in the world, perhaps primary in the world, are people. People also have 10 ways, 10 modes of expression. The same 10 modes that God reveals himself, we have to reveal ourselves. We have to grow. We have to act in the world in these 10 ways. So the 10 Sfirot become, in Hasidic thought, primarily, not only a description of the Godhead and how He acts, but it's also a description of our psychological makeup and how we act. And so this becomes much more practical, even if you're not a Kabbalist. You know, the Kabbalists, they have a way with all sorts of names of God and intentions where they feel that they're influencing the supernal realm. They can influence God and how He's going to act. Hasidim turned it on its head and they said, we'll use the same system, but really what we need to learn is how we can change how we act. And so if we're going to utilize this system of the 10 Sfirot for the 10 ways in which we have to grow, how we have to express ourselves. And so it becomes a much more practical thing, even if you're not a Kabbalist. So when we talk about the 10 Sfirot, there's only 7 weeks. What do? We say we're not going to deal with all 10. The first 3 are a different category. You know, the Zohar says that, don't get confused, this is dangerous, don't get confused, that the 10 Sfirot of God, the way He acts in the world, are parallel to 10 parts of the body. It could get confusing because you might be led to say, well, God has a body. That's a big no-no, right? God is not physical. It's one of the 13 principles of the Rambam. Many people accuse the Kabbalists of violating this principle. But then, in reaction, the Kabbalists made it very, very clear they don't mean to say that God has a body. But the pattern of the human body actually is very useful for describing these aspects of Hashem's activity and His essence. 10 Sfirot. And so we have Sfirot associated with each part of the body. The first 3 are from here and up. They're the intellectual Sfirot. There's the Keter on top of the head, and then there's Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat. You might have heard of a group called Chabad. Chabad stands for Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at. The first 3 Sfirot. Keter sometimes is counted, and then Da'at is not counted, and sometimes Da'at is counted, and then Keter is considered to be above and beyond the 10 Sfirot. In either way, the first 3 Sfirot really have to do with wisdom, intellect, and knowledge. 3 different aspects of the intellectual realm of the way God acts and the way we act. We're going to be focusing now on our lives. So there's a time for fixing your thinking, Chokhmah, Bina, Vadat, but not now. Sfirat HaOmer, we're focusing only on what happens after you have a thought or have an idea that you want to accomplish in the world. You've got to put it into practice with the lower 7 Sfirot. And so the count of the Sfirat HaOmer only deals with what the latter 7. The latter 7 are Chesed, you have it in front of you. Chesed is the first one, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malchut. So these are 7 Sfirot. 7 ways in which we have to fix ourselves. Chesed is something to do with, we know what Chesed is. What's Chesed?
Kindness.
Kindness, that's right, loving kindness. What's Gevura? Strength, might, good. Tiferet, beauty, or harmony might be a better translation because it's some kind of a blend. When you're able to blend together the giving of the chesed and the withholding of the gvura. And then you have netzach hod. Netzach and hod, there's another pair. There's pairs of sfirot. Netzach is victory or eternity. It's the endurance is the best translation sometimes. When you're going to be able, maybe they say in modern speak, stick to it, nevness, stick to itiveness. That you want to do something, you continue doing it. That's netzach. Hod is usually translated as it's connected with humility. It's connected with acceptance of the other, of what is. And then there's Yesod and Malchut, the last two, which are, Yesod is the connecting sphera. It's connecting all of the influence and all the other midot, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, and Hod, to the final midah called Malchut. Malchut is kingdom or royalty, and it's unique, I think, in Judaism, the concept of royalty. Many people think the king reigns and is powerful and overcomes everything else. The first king of Israel, King David, was very, very accepting. He didn't want to usurp the throne from Shaul. He waited until it happened. Malchut is connected with receiving and somehow being able to contain and express everybody in the nation. The king is the center point for the nation, not because he's more important than the nation, but because he is able to encompass and include all of the other qualities that are in the nation. So Malchut is the last one, perhaps the expression of all those other parts of the personality that we've been talking about. So these are the last seven sfirot. As you can see, there's 7 weeks, 7 days of each week. So the first week that we're looking at on page 357 is the week of Chesed. It's the first midah. And then we have each one of the sfirot, different ways to express that Chesed. As Chesed shebechesed is doubly. It's the finding the loving kindness within the loving kindness. Next is Gvura shebechesed, Tiferet shebechesed, and so on. Yes, Ravid?
Is that one of the 10?
No. It is one of the 10. Well, that's what I said before.
Around 11.
Exactly. If you use keter and dat, you're going to get to 11.
Exactly.
So that's what I said, that we use one or the other. Or else, because we always have to get to 10.
That's the famous saying in the Sefer Yetzirah, right? When we have 10, not 11.
10, not 11,
And
exactly.
Keter is out of that.
Exactly, precisely. That's right. So if we're counting dat, then we don't count the keter. And if we count the keter, we don't count the dat. But, well, I'm not going to go at length into this, but if you turn the page to page 358, you see that week 2 is the week of Gvura, because you can see on the right-hand column, on day 8, Hayom Shmona Yamim LaOmer, Shem Shavua Echad Yom Echad LaOmer, and then it says Chesed Shebigvura. Go down that column, Gvura Shebigvura, Tiferet Shebigvura, Netzach Shebigvura, Hod Shebigvura, Yesod Shebigvura, and Malchut Shebigvura. So the entire week is the different elements of the 7 within the major element. The major element is Gvura. And then the third week is the next column on page 359. So you can see it says in the small letters on 18, 19, on 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, small letters after the day, it says the Sfira, Chesed shebetiferet, Gvura shebetiferet, Tiferet shebetiferet, Netzach, Hod. You saw it finally at the bottom, we have Malchut shebetiferet. So we have a 7 midot, and then we have 7 within each midah, the 7 weeks. So what's today? We have to turn the page, one more page, to page 361. Today is Netzach Shebanetzach. Wow. It must be really a day with staying power, with endurance, with eternity. Hayom Netzach Shebanetzach. 25 יום שהם 3 שבועות ו40 יום. So why does it have it in there? And what do you do with that? So there is a book that Rabbi Benjamin here is carrying with him every day, It's a wonderful book by Simon Jacobson, a student of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It's called The Counting of the Omer, with 49 steps to personal refinement. And each day gives you the day of the Sefirah. Today is this is day 25, 26. 25 is today, and this is 25 days, which are 3 weeks and 4 days. But then it talks about Netzach Shebenetzach, endurance in endurance, and it gives you a little bit of a description how you can live that, how you can express that in your life. And the reason why I'm showing you, and they even have room they have an exercise to give you to do, write in your own notes. So it's sort of like a notebook, a workbook for you to do spiritual work of personal refinement. I'm just showing you how we mentioned yesterday that Pesach, the period between Pesach and Shavuot is supposed to be a period of growth, growing up. We said that there's 3 stages, right? Ibur, Yenika, and Mochin. You have to be worthy of going, of getting that Torah at the end of the 7 weeks. To be worthy, we grow. We grow spiritually. We grow with our midot, with our character traits. So there's different ways, emphases. Of course, you could emphasize, personal attributes, and you could go, of course, more spiritual, because the source of this is Kabbalistic midot in the higher realms. But if you turn the page, 2 more pages, until what you're supposed to say after reciting the Omer, you can see some add on page 365. How many days in the year? 365. But we only say this for 49 days of the year. Some add afterwards. There's a custom to recite Tehillim 67. Why? Anybody know why?
Because the Gematria gives 365.
Nope. Close, but it's something like that. There's actually 49 words.
49 words.
There's 49 words in this chapter of Tehillim, 367. And so 1 word for each day of the Omer. Some Sidurim actually write in which day it is. And then there is another song, Ana B'Koach. Who wrote that? Who wrote that poem? It's not Tehillim. Where does it come from, Ana B'Koach?
It's in the Korban section.
It's in the Korban section, but it was not written by God. Who wrote it? That's right.
I forgot the name.
The Ari. The Ari
Ari,
his name was Rabbi Yitzchak Ashkenazi. He's known as the Ari Ha'eloki. Not everybody gets to be called godly. He's the godly Rabbi Yitzchak, Ari. Ha'eloki Rabbi Yitzchak. He wrote this song based on lots of Kabbalistic interpretations. If you notice, there are 7 stanzas, 7 lines, each word, and 49 words. Each word is associated with a sefirah, and so that's also a reason why it's a way of revealing God's name and godliness in the world. And that's why the concluding line is Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Olam Va'ed. When do we say Baruch Shem? After the Shema, and after any time that you say God's name, really, when you hear God's name being recited, you should say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Olam Va'ed. So that's another Kabbalistic poem. And then finally, the last thing on the page, 365, where do you see it? It starts with Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the Universe. And take a look, pay attention. Here, there's a place for brackets. Let's do it in English. Who can read for us the prayer in English? Do you say this every day? Sometimes I don't, because it's too fast. I'm in shul, they're going to say Aleinu L'Shabeach before I have the chance to even say the day of the Omer. Today is 25 days, they're already, Aleinu L'Shabeach. What? I don't have time to say all this stuff. But sometimes you can say it afterwards if you want. But anyways, who can read for us now? Master of the Universe. Please, Stephen. Some people say it every day after they count the Omer. Go ahead. Master of the Universe.
You commanded us through your servant Moshe to count the Omer, to cleanse our carapace and impurity.
What does that even mean? What is a carapace? Carapace, the Hebrew word for that is a klipa. Klipa is a shell or a husk. As we have, sometimes when you put something into the ocean, it gets encrusted with salt. Things grow on it. Something that's there for a long, long time. If you are, there's some people that get crusty and they get old and they get a little bit rusty. I don't know. But anyways, you can unfortunately get covered over with all sorts of things which stop you from shining and from really expressing yourself. That's called a husk or a klipa in Hebrew. Here they use a fancy English word, carapace, and impurities. Goes together. Anyways, we want to cleanse our impurities during this 49 days of the Omer. As you have written in your Torah, go ahead.
And you shall count 7 complete weeks from the day following the Pesach rest day, when you brought the Omer as a wave offering. To the day after the 7th week, you shall count 50 days. This is so that the soul of your people Israel may be purified from their uncleanness.
So stop there for a second. So now we have a third interpretation. Yesterday, I don't know if it's still on the board. No, it's not. Yesterday we talked to Rabbi Melamed, said 2 reasons, 2 explanations of the mitzvah to count the Omer, right? One, he said we're counting up from national redemption to spiritual redemption, right? From the Pesach to Shavuot to receiving the Torah. And the second one, he said, was it's a period of growth, I think, right?
Yeah. Faith of the young child.
Different types of faith, right? There's the simple faith, and there's the more developed faith. Now we have a third interpretation, what I'm presenting this morning. Third interpretation is that it's not only a growth in our types of faith, but it's a growth in our behavior, in our cleansing ourselves of impurities. We want to improve ourselves. Like we said yesterday in the Shir on Pirkei Avot, Ravid was not here in the Shir on Pirkei Avot, but I think the others were. And there's a custom to study the Pirkei Avot, which is full of ethics, ethical teachings, because we're trying to improve ourselves, not only our faith and not only our nationalism to spiritual Torah, also our midot, our own personal behavior, our character. And so this is what I've been describing to you, using this Kabbalistic system. We're trying to purify our uncleanliness. Go ahead. May it also be your will.
May it also be your will, Lord our God and God our ancestor, that in the merit of the Omer count that I have counted today, there may be rectified any defect on my part in the counting of 25
what's in the brackets?
days.
Nope, not 25 days. What does it say? Insert Sephirah for each day. Here, you're supposed to add in those words in Hebrew, which I was showing you. Today we say it is Netzach Shebenetzach. So you would say, may there be rectified on my part in the counting any defect in my part in this attribute called Netzach Shebenetzach. Endurance. If I need to fix my endurance, whatever that means, then may it be rectified by my counting. So we see this is why it's in the Siddur, because if you say this passage afterwards, you have to know which Sphirah it is. Every day you have to know which Sphirah it is, because you're mentioning it inside this passage. You insert it in the brackets. And you finally conclude your prayer. Go ahead, Stephen, finish it off. May I
be cleansed and sanctified with your holiness on high, and through this may there flow a rich stream through all worlds to rectify our life, spirit, and soul from any dross and defect, purifying and sanctifying us with your sublime holiness. Amen.
Amen, amen. So with this beautiful prayer, may there be a great... See, the Kabbalists understand that Godliness comes into the world through a series of plumbing. You know, we have indoor plumbing now, right? So there's pipes which bring the water into our homes. But there's a central pumping station, right? Where the water comes through. And then over there's valves. And the water gets divided into, okay, this pipe will go to this building, this pipe will go to that building. And then sometimes there's there's a separate pipe for the hot water, and then there's a pipe for the cold water. You know what I'm talking about? So this is a metaphor for life. Life comes from God. He gives us, it's like another metaphor we could use is electricity. It comes from the power plant. Our life force comes from God. But it goes from the power plant through pipes, through wires. There's big cables which take it to the neighborhood, and then from that central box, it gets divided up. This house, that house, and then into every light switch, there's a separate wire which brings the electricity there. So we've got to get connected. Where does all the electricity comes from? The power plant, right? So the metaphor, of course, is all of life comes from Hashem. Our life force and all of the power that we have to have. Now there's not just hot and cold water. There's chesed influence. There's gevura influence. There's tiferet influence. Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. All these are various 7 types of influence that Hashem is giving to us. So that's what we say at the end here. He says, may I be cleansed and sanctified with your holiness on high. Through this may be a flow, a rich stream. It's this flow of electrons or flow of water coming through the pipes, through all these different pipes. This day I'm focusing on the Netzach Shebenetzach pipeline. And it should be purified to rectify our lives altogether. What's the goal? Is that we should be fixing our lives, spirits, and souls from any dross and any defect. We're trying to perfect ourselves, purifying and sanctifying us with your sublime holiness. So this is an opportunity for us to channel the various attributes of holiness, of godliness, into our very own lives. How do we do that? Improving our character, learning Pirkei Avot, being more ethical. And we mentioned Ben Adam le'atzmo, between man and himself, Ben Adam le'chavero, and Ben Adam le'makom. All these different aspects of our life, this is the time in which we're developing it. Okay? Okay, questions, comments? I have my son he has not a little booklet. He's got a whole book which he loves, which describes each and every one of the sfirot and how you're supposed to improve every day, and what that means for yourself, for your relationships. Usually, it has to do with relationships because how you relate to others, with giving, with receiving, with endurance in your relationships. But it's a beautiful exercise to go through and to improve yourself, to utilize the mitzvot. You could just count, say, okay, today's 25. I did the mitzvah. 7 weeks, no, 3 weeks and 4 days. You did the mitzvah. You made the bracha before, even better. If you look at the top of page 364, this almost everybody says, right after they count. This is just maybe connected to what we said yesterday. Is counting the Sfirat Omer today biblical obligation or only a rabbinic obligation? We saw that there were 2 opinions. What did it depend on? Why did some people say it's not biblical today? Because there's no temple and there's no Omer sacrifice. So what do we say right after we count? Top of the page. May the compassionate one, it's a little prayer. Harachaman, who? May the compassionate one restore the temple service to its place. Speedily and in our days. Amen. Everybody says that right after we count because we're we're counting, it's maybe a little bit pale in comparison to the original count. And we're counting even though we don't have a Beit HaMikdash. We're hoping that we'll have a Beit HaMikdash. The service will return to its place speedily in our days. I can maybe explain that who cares? What do we need a Beit HaMikdash for? What's missing from our lives? What will be different when we have a Beit HaMikdash? I'm not a Kohen, I'm not going to be in the Beit HaMikdash. I'll be going to work like every day. I'll be coming here, we'll be learning Torah. You think you're going to visit the Beit HaMikdash every day? Once a year. What is the essence of the Beit HaMikdash? What do you say?
A center point of the presence of Hashem.
Presence of Hashem in the world. Good. What do you say, Micha?
Because since there is no temple, all the kohanim and everybody are impure, so it makes a big difference in the spiritual
We don't have enough purity in the world.
No,
Good.
we don't have now. Yeah.
Right. But the problem is I don't know what purity means. Purity and impurity. I don't know what that means. Yeah.
But also what the Rav say about what the Mekubalim does with the pipes and the prayers. Then when the Mikdash there's a much combination and much influence of Sheva.
That's it. That's where I'm trying to get to. Based on the metaphor we used before, that there is a life which comes into the world from Hashem. Now the power plant is barely working. We get, what's the capacity of the flow? It could be very, very small. It could come out. Doesn't you hate that when you try to take a shower and there's very little water pressure? And a few drops come out. Right? That's terrible. Or when you're trying to turn on your lights and the light just flickers and it's very dim. There's not enough power in the power plant. The Beit HaMikdash is the power plant in this world of godliness, of holiness, of life-giving force. Nowadays that we wouldn't be alive if there was no godliness, so we have some power, but I don't know how to express it. But when we have a Beit HaMikdash, we'll have so much more capacity for holiness, for purity in the world, for goodness in the world, for life itself. Life will just become more powerful. It's hard to describe, but using the metaphor that we were saying, that this is, we still have, of course, life force, and we're fixing our midot. We have to, using the same metaphor, there's electricity in the walls, in the outlets, right? But unless you're plugged in, you're not going to get any of it, right? You have to plug in. So we have to learn how to plug in, and we have to learn to create. If we don't have a radio or a phone or a speaker or an electric kettle, then there's lots of electricity in the walls. It's not going to heat up your water. You need to have the vessel for it. You need to have the hot water kettle. You need to have the speaker. You need to have everything there so that you can receive all that electricity, which will help you boil up the water. And so we have to prepare ourselves. We have to prepare the 7 lower sfirot and make ourselves more pure, more holy, and better ourselves. And even now, of course, we receive some godliness in the world. But when the Beit HaMikdash will be back, I can only imagine what it'll be like. But we can perhaps try to understand that a little bit using this metaphor. That the influence, what does it say here in the prayer? That may the flow, a rich stream, may there be a rich stream through all the world. And this stream will be Niagara Falls. It'll be a very powerful wave coming into the world, and we'll have even a greater access to purifying ourselves and the entire world. We'll have holiness in the world. Anyways, this is another explanation of Sfirat HaOmer, which we didn't touch upon yesterday. To complete what we learned in chapter I think it was chapter 2 or chapter 3. What was it? What did we do yesterday? In Zmanim. This book by Rav.
We are now in chapter 3.
We did chapter 2. So this was explaining the basics of the mitzvah, what it's about, and what happens if you skip a day, remember? But before we get to Lag BaOmer, we have to get to chapter 3. Chapter 3 discusses the customs of mourning during the Omer period. I got a question last night. I didn't answer it. I have to answer my student, a former student here. No. Zmanim. You guys might have brought the wrong book. It's got to be the one that says Zmanim on it. Zmanim. Everybody have the right one now?
Yes.
Amazing. The thin ones, I think, have to be put away. Not yet. We're going to get to them soon. We're going to talk about Shavuot. It's in that book, but right now we're still in the Omer period. Student asked me, can there be an allowance to play music at a party for, it must be his birthday, or maybe it's her birthday, I don't know, his wife, I don't know. But he wanted permission to know if there's any way to have permission to play music at a birthday party. And it's quite a learned question. I'm not telling you who it is. But he says to me, we're going to know the answer by the end of this class. He says to me, he writes me as follows. Let me find it here. Shalom Rav, I have a question. Are there leniencies in the prohibition against music in the Omer, particularly for an occasion like a birthday? As I understand it, the Gemara mentions only weddings and haircuts. The Rambam does not mention any mourning in the Sfira. And Shulchan Aruch again mentions only haircuts and weddings. The prohibition of only dancing was extrapolated from the 3 weeks in Av and applied to the Sfira, and later extended to include music. However, it is noted that the Rambam had a prohibition on music and singing anyways, so it would be also applied to the Sfira. So, you see, he's done some research. He really wants to play some music. I also understand there to be leniencies such as a cappella, as opposed to instrumental music, and radio as opposed to live.
He's very creative.
There are other precedents where a joyful occasion seems to override a rabbinic prohibition, such as the fast of the firstborn before Pesach. We don't fast, we celebrate with the Siyum. And Yom Ha'atzmaut, music is allowed because of the Chag. So my question is, does a joyous occasion allow for music in the Sfira? And if so, which occasions? For example, a birthday. Okay. He did some homework. And we're going to have to be able to answer him. What do you guys think?
No.
You think no. Okay, Michael's very against it. You don't like birthdays? Or what's the reasoning?
But I think he restores...
Shalom. Baruch Hashem.
Today, after Mincha, 2 o'clock, which is quote-unquote an off hour, there's some that go to the Rav Gilad Arieli, but today, you may Shani on Mondays, he doesn't have his group. Today, some of you have met Rabbi Yisrael Newman, a very, very big Talmud Chacham. In addition to the big Talmud Chacham, you have Rabbi Menachem Weinberg. He has a group study today at 2 o'clock. If you want to, you're welcome to try. Rabbi Menachem, what's his name? Rabbi Yisrael Newman, 2 o'clock in the women's section. We're not going to find women there today. Ezrat Nashim. Okay,
בבקשה. כי היה קר, אז עכשיו חם, עכשיו נוכל לכבות. היה צינון קצת באוויר בבוקר. תודה. Okay. So you say no, you say anybody else? What do you think?
I should say, I only know like what's Shabbat, like extension of, it's allowed like to play something.
Okay.
But
I've heard that too, yeah.
Leniency.
There,
Otherwise, I agree with Michael.
Okay, all right.
First, because birthday is a pagan tradition. Yeah,
Pagan
it's
tradition.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
okay.
It's not a Jewish tradition.
It's not necessarily, but not necessarily pagan. Not everything not Jewish is pagan. But
Yeah, but it's not a Jewish thing. It's not a halacha to commemorate birthday.
Okay,
Over the
okay. I hear that. Ravid, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I heard you can play music, but not joyful music.
Aha, there's a distinction between different types of music. Very
Well, you
interesting.
said music.
Yeah, how do you define, right? It's hard to define. Okay, what do you say, Hanana?
Well, but for Jews, it's not our tradition, something like that. And this is true.
What is the question? What are you about? What are you asking about?
Celebrating birthdays.
Birthdays. Yes, that's what Michal said. Maybe birthday is not such a Jewish thing. Yeah, that's good point.
Celebrating birthdays.
Right, the Rebbe was very big into birthdays.
No, I'm not against birthday.
No.
I guess it's using birthday to break order.
I see.
To break
I see. Break the customs.
Yeah.
So it's a good question, right? So you see that? So you guys are ready to be rabbis? No, not yet, because you haven't studied yet. You're just saying your ideas from your head. We have to learn the sources. We have to understand what the sources actually say about these prohibitions during the Omer. Then maybe we'll be wiser. We're here right now. We're going to learn Rav Melamed's presentation, right? Of course, there are other rabbis with other presentations and other opinions. I'm going to have to decide what's my opinion because my student asked me, right? I'm a rabbi. I got smicha. There's a reason they gave me smicha, right? They said you have legitimacy to give a psak halacha, to give your best application of the law, of all the sources, of all the tradition, to this particular case. I'm going to turn this off. I'm sorry, the noise is still on. Let us start. Of course, we're reading from a summary book, not from the Talmud and not the codes, but it's a wonderful book for us to learn at this stage. Don't think that after you read this you can be a rabbi, but let's go. Let's start. Okay? Chapter 3. Yosef, please read for us the reason for these customs.
The reasons for these customs. The days between Pesach and Shavuot are days of sorrow because 24,000 of Rabbi Akiva students died during that period. Therefore, we keep some customs of mourning during this period. We do not marry, get haircuts, or engage in elective like dancing. Before we discuss the details of these customs, let us expand a bit upon the main point, namely the reason Rabbi Akiva students died. Talmud states Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students, and they all died during the same period because they did not treat each other with respect. It is taught in Baraita, they all died between Pesach and Shavuot, and they all died a terrible death. The world was desolate until Rabbi Akiva came to our rabbis in the south and taught them. And these are the new students, Rav Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, Rav Shimon, and Rabbi Elazar.
1 second. Which one is the most famous? Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon, these 5 students, is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that we're going to speak about more when we get closer to Lag BaOmer. Go ahead.
Rabbi Elazar ben Shmuel, it was they who revived the Torah. The Midrash further recounts that Rabbi Akiva said to his new students, my sons, the first ones died only because they begrudged one another. Make sure not to do as they did. Since then, the Omer period has become a time when some mourning customs are observed and when people, especially Torah students, try to improve their interpersonal relationships. Since this is based on custom, rather than an explicit rabbinic enactment, customs vary among the different Jewish communities, as well as explain the law. Around 1,000 years later, during the time of the Crusades, which began in the year 1456, 1096, Christians slaughtered thousands of Jews in Germany. These tragedies, too, occurred mainly during the days of the Omer, approximately 500 years later, in 5408, 5409. The Jews were massacred. Once again, this time in Eastern Europe, 10,000s of Jews were murdered. These pogroms also occurred, for the most part, during the Omer period. Therefore, Ashkenazim are inclined to be more stringent regarding these customs of mourning.
Okay, so we have
And there's
a
no
few
right
historical
to
events.
celebrate birthday with music.
We're getting there. We're getting there. First, understand why there's
It's
any.
even worse now. It's even worse.
Yeah, understand. He didn't say if he's Ashkenazi or Sephardi, which is important to know. I happen to know who he is, and I know
But you
where he's coming from.
the customs of the place.
Right, that's right. Well, so here we have an ingathering of the exiles, and so really there's different communities within. But okay, let's see what those different customs apply. First of all, in terms of the timing. Michael, please.
Ariel? Or me?
Number 2, Michael, yeah.
Since then,
Page 51, number 2.
sorry, the duration of the mourning period. There are many customs regarding when the mourning period begins and ends. We will mention the 4 primary ones. First, the custom of mourning applied for the entire Omer period. This custom is based on the version of the Gemara that appears in our text, Yevamot 62b, which states that Rabbi Akiva's students died between Pesach and Shavuot. Thus, one should follow the custom of mourning throughout that period. Number 2, the mourning period continues until Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer. This custom is based on a well-known tradition that Rabbi Akiva's students stopped dying on Lag BaOmer. Number 3, the customs of mourning apply until the 24th day of the Omer. This is based on the Sephardic tradition according to which the text of the Gemara reads, Rabbi Akiva's students died until Pro Hatzeret. Since pros means half, the Atzeret refers to Shavuot. This means that they died until half of the month before Shavuot. When we subtract 15 days from the 49 days of Omer, we are left with 34 days during which Rabbi Akiva's students died, during which we observe customs of mourning. Number 4, we observe 33 continuous days of mourning. This custom is based on the tradition that Rabbi Akiva's students died on every non-festive day of the Omer period, which adds up to 33 days. Consequently, we must observe customs of mourning for 33 straight days. Whether this period coincides with the beginning of or the end of the Omer period.
Okay, so we have 4 different ways to count for the duration of these customs of mourning. Some say the full 49 days. Some say 33. Some say 34. Some say 33, but not consecutive. All right, what's the common practice? So the next passage in page 53 says the Sephardic practice is, according to Shulchan Aruch, the customs of mourning begin on the first day of Omer and last until the morning of the 34th. Just to keep it short, that is the common practice of most Sephardi poskim. Okay? There's only one exception. So we're going to see what the customs are. You don't take haircuts. When can you get your haircut? According to this.
Friday.
According to this, when can you get a haircut? The 34th day in the morning, right? Okay. There's only one exception, and that is that you're allowed to play music on Lag BaOmer itself. That's what it says at the bottom, page 53. Despite this, one may sing, play music, and dance on Lag BaOmer in honor of the anniversary of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai's death. However, the other customs of mourning remain binding. Okay? So, according to this practice, one may not get married or cut one's hair on Lag BaOmer. It's only about music that you're allowed to do. Right? This is many Sephardi poskim. They don't allow people to get married on Lag BaOmer, only the day afterwards. On Lamed Dalet or Lamed Hey, Lamed Dalet at night, then after Lamed Dalet, then you're allowed to get married, but not on Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer, you're only allowed to dance for Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, but the Omer period, really, the customs of mourning continue until the 34th. Many Sephardim follow this. Okay? Now, what's the Ashkenazic practice? I'll finish, and then the Ashkenazic practice is, take a look on page 54. Do you have a book? Young man, do you have a book? There's more books. Behind Michael, behind you, there's another book.
He has one.
He has one. Okay, everybody have one?
Yes.
Hananel has one? Okay, page 54. It says, the prevalent custom among the Ashkenazim in Israel today amalgamates several traditions. Most customs of mourning last until Lag BaOmer, while some continue afterward. Okay, so this is based on the tradition that although the plague ended on Lag BaOmer, students fell ill before then, died between the 34th of Omer and Shavuot. Therefore, Ashkenazim do not cut their hair, get married, play music, or dance until Lag BaOmer. Afterwards, however, they refrain only from weddings and large celebrations. Another reason for this custom is that during the Crusades and the Khmelnytsky massacres of 1648-49, tens of thousands of Ashkenazi Jews were killed. Since these murders occurred mainly during the latter part of the Omer, Ashkenazi communities refrained from large celebrations during this period. Unless from Rosh Chodesh Sivan, that's at the end, then there's a custom to permit weddings before Shavuot. Okay, this is common in many communities. Turn the page 56. On the day of Lag BaOmer itself, it is permissible to get married and take a haircut. So there's one day in the middle, which is exterritorial to the mourning customs, and you are allowed to get married even on the day of Lag BaOmer and take a haircut. And there's a debate about the night of Lag BaOmer. This week, this year, next week, is it next week already? 8 days from now.
Yes.
I'm officiating at a wedding.
You're in a wedding.
I'm officiating at a wedding on the eve of Lag BaOmer. The custom is to be lenient in some communities. The custom is to be lenient, and you're allowed to get married even at the beginning of Lag BaOmer. And this is a common custom. I'll tell you, even more common among the Ashkenazim. More and more, it's becoming more common, and that is that we just do the first 33 days until Lag BaOmer, and that's it. And then it's over. And we don't have any mourning customs afterwards. Very similar to the Sfaradim, except the Sfaradim do day 34, Ashkenazim finish on day 33. Many rabbis allow people to get married after Lag BaOmer, Ashkenazim after Lag BaOmer, because after Lag BaOmer, those mourning customs are finished. Okay? And of course, dancing on Lag BaOmer itself is allowed. Those are the two major customs. So far, so good? So far, so good? All right.
Question about the wedding.
Yes?
Yes, because I've heard in the Torah, in the Shulchan Aruch, that you cannot mix two simchas. You cannot have one simcha like a festival, Shabbat and Shavuot on the same day.
Right.
This also apply to Lag BaOmer and wedding, or
No.
different?
No. The joy on Lag BaOmer is not mandated at all. No. It's a custom.
That's why
That comes much later. It's a custom that's not halachically defined as simcha.
But you cannot get married on Pesach, on Shavuot.
Correct.
In this case,
That's right. That's right. Because it's a Torah law that you have to be joyous on Pesach and Shavuot. Yeah.
But is it true that Lag BaOmer came in the time of the Geonim, that they decided?
It's as we saw the original source. The Talmud never speaks about the day of Lag BaOmer.
No, that's right. The Geonim, they're not from the Talmud.
Right, exactly. The Talmud says that there's this period between Pesach and Shavuot, and there's one version of the Braita that says pros atzeret. Pros atzeret, right? We said half of Shavuot. What does it mean? Half? So half a month. Half a month is 2 weeks before. 2 weeks before, 49 minus 14 is 34. So 34 days, that's where that custom came from. But it never says anywhere anything specific about Lag BaOmer in the Talmud. So you're saying the first mention of it is in Gaonic times? We're going to learn about Lag BaOmer explicitly, and maybe he'll mention that custom. That's chapter 5. We're going to see where the first mention of Lag BaOmer is. Does he quote Gaonim? I don't know if he even quotes Gaonim. It's definitely many hundreds of years, but it's interesting that you quote Gaonim. I'm not familiar with that. But it's definitely a later idea that Lag BaOmer is special. So it's not a biblical mitzvah of simcha. So there's no aim between simcha and simcha. Okay. All right, so let's continue and see how he paskins about weddings and engagements. I will say that for all of you who are still single, it's a big mitzvah to get married. And you should not push it off. I met somebody the other day who shall remain nameless, because you guys know him. And just to keep your curiosity, and he's about to get engaged, and said he doesn't want to announce the engagement now because it's Sfirat HaOmer. I said to him, that's wrong. You get married as soon as possible. You're not going to get married now, but you can have an engagement. Why doesn't he want to get engaged now? We're going to read about it. Because probably the answer is because he wants to have a party with music. Having a party with music is prohibited according to most poskim. Let's continue. Section 5 on page 57. So who's reading now? Yisrael, can you read for us? Please.
And now that we had discussed the duration of the mourning period, we will outline the law of the various custom in the detail. The why this if I see Rabbi Akiva's student days in the period between Pesach and Shavuot, the Jewish people had a custom not to get married during this time. Some poskim maintain that only optional marriages are prohibited. Like despot, a man who had been married before had already fulfilled the mitzvah of the consecration. However, one who had yet to fulfill the mitzvah of the consecration may get married during the Oma period because the mitzvah of the marriage overrides the Oma period because the mitzvah of the
Overrides the custom, yeah.
The custom. And
in practice, though,
in the practice, who the conscience of Rabbi
of Acharonim,
is that it is customary not to get married during this period, even if one had yes to the fulfilled the mitzvah of the consecration, because otherwise the custom of the Manings would have among no
significance. Thank you. You know what? I think that enough rabbis are not aware that it's a big deal to prohibit weddings. There are many rabbis who register people for weddings, and I was once upon a time a registrar. And, we said, can you get married on the eve of Lag BaOmer or just on Lag BaOmer? Some rabbis say, no, we want to be machmir, no weddings for the entire 49 days of the Omer. People want to get married. It's a mitzvah to get married. So much so that we see that if someone's never been married before, maybe there's no custom to not get married. To push off a wedding is a very severe violation even, you could say. Because you're stopping someone from doing a mitzvah. So I don't really understand those rabbis who are very severe and strict about this custom. Getting married before Lag BaOmer, after Lag BaOmer. You have to keep the custom. Custom is very ancient, comes from the Gaonic times. It doesn't mention Lag BaOmer yet. It's a different Gaonim, but the custom not to get married, fine, we won't get married. But you have to expand it to the entire 49 days. There are people whose their entire livelihood is dependent on weddings, right? The halls, the musicians, the catering, the dressmakers, the hairstylists, the
Catering.
the flower maker. A wedding is a big industry. To stop them for 2 months when you could only stop them for 1 month, you'd have to have, say, a very strong tradition to really say, okay, we're not going to break our tradition. As we see, that the common custom is that you're allowed to get married, and there's reason to be lenient, of course, because it's such a big mitzvah. In any case, there's 2 types of marriages. He says if someone's already fulfilled the mitzvah of having children, then perhaps that's less important, and it would not override the custom to not get married. But in any case, let's continue to the next page. Yes?
I said 5 minutes ago about the girl in the Lachba Omerken.
Yeah.
I had a mistake. I mean, they invented the morning practice.
That's what he mentions here. Okay, so that's what he said. The practice not to get married comes from the Gaonim.
So before,
But I don't know that the Gaonim mentioned Lag BaOmer. I don't know. Okay.
But so
Okay.
it was before the Gaonim period, there was no morning.
No, it does say that the students died during that period.
But it was not like
Definitely, but exactly how to practice that, what that means in terms of practice, it's not mentioned in the Talmud. It's much later. It's later.
Then you can be more lenient then.
That's right. We can be more flexible for sure.
So the student can keep his birthday then.
Well, wait. We haven't yet talked about music. We've talked about weddings. Now we're going to skip ahead to haircuts. We're going to skip ahead to haircuts. In any case, if you do want to get married during this period, you should consult with a rabbi, and they'll advise you. Depends if you're Sephardi, depends if you're Ashkenazi. I advised some people who were Ashkenazi, and they wanted to get married during this period. Told them, go to this registrar and not that registrar. Because I know that their policy is to be stringent and they won't let you get married. And their policy is to be lenient. Right? So there's room for both. It's not like it's an absolute law that's from Sinai. So if there's a reason why they wanted to get married now, for whatever reason, it's convenient for them, for their families, there's no reason to be stringent unnecessarily. Okay?
Marriage on Rosh Chodesh is only for Ashkenaz.
Yes, Rosh Chodesh Iyar, you're talking about, right? Rosh Chodesh Iyar, there is some rabbis who allow you to get married. Only some, not everybody, not all Ashkenazim, right? Some Ashkenazim, even that's the type of question where you would take counsel about where to register, because some rabbis are more machmir about Rosh Chodesh. But let's take a look at the top of page 59. Only weddings are forbidden. One may hold an engagement party. So this fellow who says he doesn't want to get engaged, why not get engaged? The only thing is, on condition that no music is played. And in the bottom he says that even though an engagement party is joyous, it's permitted because it involves some element of a mitzvah. It strengthens the bond between the couple. And it pushes you ahead towards your wedding, so you don't have to wait. But music is already a bigger problem because it's not actually called a Sudat Mitzvah. Sudat Mitzvah is when you actually have a mitzvah, like a brit. And that's a question also. He puts in the footnotes, can you have music at a Brit Milah celebration? It's interesting. It is a Sudat Mitzvah. So whenever you have a Sudat Mitzvah, that's what he was trying to say. Well, whenever you make a Siyum Masechet, it's a Sudat Mitzvah, so maybe you can have music. So he says in the footnote here that it depends on the custom. Most people have music at the Brit Milah, then you're allowed to have music. If most people don't have music at the Brit Milah, like I think most don't, then you don't. So also with engagement parties. If the local custom is that you always have music at engagement parties, then you can do that. But since this is not so universal, I think the common practice is to not have music at an engagement party, but it's still a little bit up in the air. Okay, next, haircuts. Yes, please.
Music and singing is something.
Coming next. Right now we just did weddings, engagement parties, and now we're going to do haircuts. Those are the original customs of mourning. And then we're going to get to the extensions. Okay, extensions come later. Haircuts. Page 59. Aaron, you ready to read for us? Page 59, the top.
Haircut. The Rishonim write that one should not get a haircut during the Omer period. As we learned above, Sephardim observe this prohibition until the morning of the 34th day of the Omer. Ashkenazic custom, on the other hand, permits it from the morning of Lag BaOmer, and some are even more lenient, permitting haircuts on the night of Lag BaOmer. In a time of need, one may rely on those who rule leniently. Only regular haircuts, which include an element of joy, are prohibited. However, one may trim his mustache if it interferes with his eating. Similarly, one who gets headaches when his hair is too long, or one who has sores on his head, may cut his hair during this period. If one has lice, or one's child has lice, then if there is no other way to get rid of them, a haircut is permissible. The prohibition applies to both men and women. However, a woman may cut her hair for purposes of modesty. For example, if her hair comes out of her head covering, she may cut it. One may also cut or pluck hair for cosmetic purposes.
Okay, so the bottom line is that if you look on the next page, on page 60, the paragraph in the middle of the page says, those who follow the customs of the Arizal take care not to cut their hair for the entire Omer period, until Erev Shavuot, when they cut their hair in honor of the festival. Okay, so this is, the only exception is haircutting for 3-year-old boys at Lag BaOmer. But, so there are different customs. That's, as I said, Sephardi versus Ashkenazim, till the 34th, to the 33rd day. The Kabbalists, the entire 49 days. People grow out their beards. So the real Kabbalists never cut their beards their entire life. Right? Some Kabbalists, they don't even trim their beards. The beard has a very great significance in the Kabbalah. So, but for most people, you take a haircut once a month, right? Approximately. So usually you take a haircut before Pesach. You're okay for 33 days, right? And then after Lag BaOmer, or on Lag BaOmer, if you're Ashkenazi, you can get your next haircut. It's not such a big deal. What becomes to be a big deal is if you didn't prepare, you didn't get a haircut before Pesach, and so your hair gets really long. You have to wait. You can't get a haircut. Now, but the question is, does the prohibition of haircuts refer to shaving as well?
But
Okay, yeah.
But what I also understand of this, what we read is like that women are allowed to cut their hair. Only for men.
Nope. You read wrong.
Just for the modesty.
You read wrong. What does it say at the beginning of the paragraph?
For the men.
What does it say at the beginning of the paragraph? The prohibition applies to both men and women. Okay? Okay, I know it's not your native language, but you've been speaking English for a long time and reading English. It says the prohibition applies to men and women as well. It's only for the sake of tzniut, if there's some issue she has, or cosmetic purposes, it's not a haircut. But the prohibition applies to men and women equally. Yes? Yeah.
The day before Yom HaShmos, Rabbi is going to post that.
Yes. Yes. We spoke about that when we spoke about Yom HaTzmaut. Many poskim said Yom HaTzmaut is a break. It's a celebration. It's a day of celebration. It overrides these customs. Of course, this is a new holiday, and so it's not discussed when you're discussing all the laws of the Omer period. But correct, there's another opportunity to take a haircut if you like to, if you want to,
Is
during
it
the
only
Omer.
inside Israel or outside of Israel?
No, outside of Israel as well. You have to celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, in my opinion. You have to celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut.
Don't.
Some
Most
do,
people don't.
some do, some don't. Most people don't. They don't. They're not aware. What can I do? What can I do? They haven't come to learn the true Torah of Machon Meir.
Unfortunately.
But if you're celebrating a holiday, it makes perfect sense that the custom of mourning is overridden. You're playing music, Yom Ha'atzmaut, you're celebrating, you're dancing in the streets, so you should be allowed to cut your hair. Even making a wedding should be allowed. Some poskim allow that too, although some make a distinction. But okay, shaving. What about shaving? Can you shave? Some people shave every day. A lot of beards here, I see, in the class. But what is that included? So many authorities maintain that shaving is included in the prohibition of cutting one's hair. So whenever haircuts are prohibited, shaving is prohibited. Most yeshiva students, if you look at page 60 at the bottom, I'm reading from the bottom, last 3 lines, most yeshiva students follow this practice to the point that refraining from shaving has become the prominent sign of mourning during the Omer period. You know who has adopted this practice? It's such a Kiddush Hashem. The President of Israel. Doesn't wear a kippah on every day. He's not ostensibly a religious man. I don't know what he does personally. I don't know if he puts on tefillin or not. But he had a good religious education when he was young. And even though he's not a kippah wearer on a daily basis, he grew out his beard during Sfirat HaOmer.
Is Yitzchak Herzog?
Yes, Yitzchak Herzog. His grandfather was the chief rabbi of Israel. And his father was the president of Israel. Bibi didn't see him growing out his beard. But, however, take a look at the top page 61. Good question, yeah. Some poskim, however, maintain that there is a fundamental difference between haircuts and shaving. A haircut is a special occasion, includes a joyous element. It is common that people get their haircut in honor of holidays and celebratory events. In contrast, shaving is a routine practice nowadays, done daily or every few days, in order to remove unsightly whiskers and stubble. Therefore, the custom to refrain from cutting one's hair does not apply to shaving. According to this opinion, it is especially appropriate to shave on Fridays to avoid greeting Shabbat in a disrespectful manner. Those who want to rely on the lenient opinion may do so. I think I mentioned to you the other day that my Rosh Yeshiva and teacher of blessed memory, of Aaron Lichtenstein, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, he was of the opinion that you must shave, if you shave regularly, at least on Friday, the Chvod Shabbat, during Sfirat HaOmer, and he had an entire rationale, halachic reasoning to back it up. However, it is proper for each person to follow the practice of his father or the instruction of his rabbi. For though technically one may rely on the reasoning of those who rule leniently, we cannot ignore the fact that the custom to abstain from shaving during the Omer period is a strong expression of one's willingness to sacrifice for the sake of mitzvah observance. So there is concern that abolishing this custom will harm one's dedication to upholding traditional custom. As I said, the standard in yeshivot has been that we do not shave during the Omer period, whenever we're prohibited from cutting our hair. Now, finally, I can get to Binyamin's question. Page 63, dancing and musical instruments. Since it is customary not to celebrate too much during the Omer period, the Acharonim write that one may not engage in optional dancing. They also forbid playing or listening to musical instruments. So basically, from not celebrating, the custom became expanded. So turn the page. There's some details here. He talks about he's more lenient than most on page 66. As you can see, to justify himself, he's got a long footnote, a full page long footnote on page 67. But this is his approach. And he says the following. Take a look. On page 66, number 10 Okay, who's going to read for us now? Yosef, go ahead.
Many poskim maintain that there is no difference between listening to live music and listening to music on the radio or any other electronic device. Both are forbidden during the Omer period until Lag Omer. And the 3 weeks, one may, however, listen to non-instrumental music on an electronic device. Some forbid even this because the device itself is considered a musical instrument. However, some maintain that the prohibition on music does not apply to listening to music on the radio or on any other personal electronic device. Listening to music on an electronic device is regular, universal practice, and since it has become our so routine, it is no longer considered a source of joy and festivity. Thus, listening to it is like listening to singing without musical accompaniment, which is permitted during the Omer period. In addition, a distinction should regular songs, and joyous songs should be forbidden to listen to during the Omer. But regular tunes and certain sad tunes should not be prohibited during the morning period of the Omer. Therefore, one who wishes to be lenient may rely on this opinion and listen to regular and sad songs on a personal electronic device. However, he should not play this music loudly because the power of a sound that fills the tape at the wheel.
Here, an occasion. It's not like you're bringing a music or as you're traveling, and it's just sort of part of the background. It's not it brings it as an option, and I find that many times music calms me down, relaxes me. I like to listen to music just to be in a good mood, and I think there's plenty of room to be lenient about this. The prohibition of not getting married is a far cry from, the way you had a festive dinner, but to sing a cappella with his mouth, it sounds like the bass. The other guy made a sound that sounds like his voice, like a cymbal, like a high note. And it sounded beautiful, and it was just as beautiful as having music. I think it's missing the point, right? Of course, they sang songs which were appropriate for the occasion, but the common custom on the radio, right, there are now religious radio stations that follow the guidance of rabbis. What are they going to play for an entire month? At least 33 days. What are they going to play? So, sad songs. Nobody wants to hear sad songs. It's not, you don't have, this is not the period of mourning. There's only some customs of mourning. And so they're developed an entire industry of Jewish songs with no instruments. And so you have the voice a cappella or guys doing beatbox with the mouth. This voice and festive, you wouldn't know that there's no instruments. It's missing the point. It's missing the point. But the rabbis allow it. The rabbis say, okay, no instruments, but voice only is allowed, a cappella. And you have albums that are being put out, the same songs, the same music, with instruments and without instruments. Why? For this period of the Omer, and they're lenient also in the 3 weeks. I think that's almost silly. It's almost silly. This distinction between the type of song and why you're playing it makes a lot more sense. The point is not to have dance parties. It's not a halacha of musical instruments per se. It's a question of keeping the atmosphere of the day and not having dance parties like a wedding, but to listen to music, even with instruments, as he says, if it's regular tunes that are not, jumpy dance music, I think that makes more sense to my mind. Yes, Ravid?
By the Sephardic people, we sing every morning in Shachrit, the song of the sea.
Right.
So it's singing.
Right.
I'm getting a little bit confused when I look on Yom Shishi, when I come here to the service. We have the Lecha Dodi, we're singing, and we also dancing.
Right.
And this confuses me.
Okay, it's a good question. The answer is quite simple, that when it comes to, first of all, there's no instruments, right? And number two, Shabbat is probably an exception, right? There's no mourning customs on Shabbat. So, anyways, you're not going to play musical instruments. But dancing on the Shabbat is a common custom which overrides the prohibition of dancing to commemorate the morning.
Even in the time of Omer.
Even in the time of Omer. Even in the time of Omer. Some people extend it. This is a little bit iffy. Some people say, to get ready for Shabbat, I need to put myself in the right atmosphere. So every Friday, during the course of the year, I listen to, Jewish music to get myself in the mood. It's very moving, it's very powerful. So that also can be allowed during the Omer period, because you're preparing for Shabbat. It's not Shabbat yet. Here, I'm not sure. If you're going to make a loud dancing style music with instruments on Friday afternoon, I don't think it's allowed, because you could have a wedding on Friday afternoon. So if a wedding's prohibited, it's not Shabbat yet, the wedding's prohibited during the Omer period, so that type of loud dancing music with instruments should be prohibited as well. And some people extend it, you mentioned, after Shabbat as well. Why am I listening to music after Shabbat? There's a concept to escort the queen, right? Melaveh Malka. The period of Motzei Shabbat is, some people call it the fourth meal of Shabbat. Right? Melaveh Malka. It's a mitzvah to have a meal, to escort the queen. Some people say, well, if it's in honor of Shabbat, we can also have music, but I think it's a problem, because
But you can shave on Friday.
there's different opinions. Some opinions say if you shave regularly, then Friday, the L'chvot Shabbat, you can shave during the Omer period. Not during the 3 weeks, that's something else. But during the Omer period, yes, you can shave on Fridays. Because the prohibition of shaving is different from the prohibition of music. Each one has got its different character. So
because it's a mitzvah to be happy on Shabbat.
It's a mitzvah to honor the Shabbat. The way we honor the Shabbat, there's a din of, it's called kavod and oneg. There's different elements. Kavod, for example, how do we honor the Shabbat? By dressing nicely. That's before Shabbat. We prepare. Cleaning the house. Making the house tidy. Shabbat hasn't started yet. It's a mitzvah to have the house ready for Shabbat. So too, the shaving that you do on Erev Shabbat is for the sake of the honor of the Shabbat. It's different when you're music and dancing, I think, is still a separate.
Like as you said, music calms you down, and then you can listen. And it's not
right. So if it's
Shabbat is even more important.
I'm not saying it's totally wrong. I'm saying it's a little bit more of a stretch. I think that if somebody wants to listen to music to prepare for Shabbat, there's room to justify that. Loud dancing music might be less appropriate, but I could understand the rabbi who would say, if it's for the sake of Shabbat, before, even after, it can be allowed. But again, there's different opinions, and it's a question of, how strong the need is. Especially, we said about your mood. There's somebody, for example, and I'll take your question. There's somebody, for example, who is struggling with depression. Many people are clinically depressed, and that means that they can't get out of bed. They feel so sad about their life, or for whatever reason, it's an illness. And the only thing that makes them feel good, well enough to function, is listening to music. It helps them not fall into that pit of despair. So, of course, for somebody like that, it's obvious that you can listen to music. Baruch Hashem, not everybody's so depressed. And listening to music can help your mood, but it's not like you're going to be depressed otherwise. So then, that's a different question. But so somebody who needs his Erev Shabbat music to cheer himself up, it depends on the situation. So that's why there's much more room to be lenient, because these are laws not even mentioned in the Talmud, right? They start still 1,500 years old. It's still from the period of the Geonim. But the definitions are not, were developed over the ages in different communities, in different time periods, in different levels. Of course, electronic music was never discussed by the Geonim. And the Rishonim, the Rambam didn't talk, can you listen on your iPhone? He didn't talk about that. There was no such thing. So the rabbis today have to come and give the psak halacha. And there's a lot of room for flexibility to the rabbis today because it's a new application of the older principles. Ravi, thank you for waiting. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, if you are married, you take this joyful moment to buy flowers for your wife for Shabbat. So
it would be a crime not to, because of Sfirat HaOmer. Nobody says you're not allowed to have joy. Don't get married, but you're already married. So you must keep up the marriage and do joyful things. It's only public expressions that are similar to weddings, which are problematic. But of course you should buy flowers for her. There's no reason to increase the sadness. Good, you asked. Yes, Hananel.
About music, when we saw a video, they came out with music, something.
Yeah.
What should I do?
Right. So this is it depends. If you're following the opinions that you're allowed to listen to music privately, I don't think it makes a difference whether there's a video at the same time, right? But if your custom is not to listen to music and you just want to watch the video, that's an educational video and there's a little bit of tunes in it, I don't think that makes it into music. You're watching it primarily because of the information that you're learning from the video, right? Some people have, sometimes on the radio, they have a news report, and then they have a jingle, like a little tune to introduce the speaker, or in between sections. I don't think that's considered to be listening to music. That you have to turn it off and turn it on, turn it off and turn it on, or you have a YouTube video, they're listening to a shiur. And at the beginning of the shiur, they have a little bit of music. Is that prohibited on the Sfirat HaOmer? I think that's an extreme position. I think you could be lenient. If you're not listening to the music as music, that's like he says somebody who's driving who needs to stay awake. The point of listening to the music is to stay awake. It's noise. So there's room to be lenient. There's a lot has to do with the context and your intention as well. But yeah. So that's the customs. According to most poskim, it's almost over. Only in 8 more days, but it's important to realize that there are varying opinions and varying situations. And what should I answer? My student. Now that we've studied the chapter.
No.
You say no. You still say no. Why?
Because for many reasons. First, because it's a mourning period. Second, because birthday is not mitzvah. There is no mitzvah in birthday, any mitzvah.
Good. So what did we say about when you do have a mitzvah? So it's a brit milah. Or marriage you're not going to have. But what about mitzvot which you do have? You have a brit milah during this period. You have pidyon ben. You have an engagement, which is sort of like a mitzvah. So are you allowed to have music or not? So that was the section we skipped. And he said, that depends on the custom in the community. If you're having a mitzvah, if everybody at a bar mitzvah has music, so then technically you would be allowed to have music at a bar mitzvah. I think the custom is, some people do and some people don't. But in any case, that would be the only excuse, really, if you're celebrating a mitzvah. To celebrate a birthday is not considered a mitzvah. Even if the Lubavitcher Rebbe says it's an important day, he doesn't say, he can't create a mitzvah. There's no mitzvah recorded in the Torah or in the sages to mark your birthday in any particular way. And so there's no mitzvah involved. It's hard to say that we're going to abrogate the laws of the Omer mourning practices. Siyum Masechet is something that he mentioned. So let's say let's say it's his wife's birthday. So you're going to take her out to dinner and you're going to celebrate with her for her birthday, which is allowed, right? We're allowed to eat meat, we're allowed to have wine, there's no prohibitions other than weddings and haircuts. And the weddings expands into music. But it is a Sudat Mitzvah. What happens if you have a Siyum Masechet during the Omer period? So you're allowed to have meat and wine, but I don't think you're allowed to have music. Because most Siyumim don't have music. And we're in that middle category that even if it's a mitzvah, it depends on the custom. So even if you have a Siyum Masechet, not at most Siyumi Masechet have music. So I don't think that would allow you to have music. I think I'm going to have to disappoint him.
Yeah.
Or his wife. I don't know which one it is, but it's a birthday. I think it's a stretch.
The question is, when is the birthday? And
right. I imagine it's now. I imagine it's during the Omer period, or he wouldn't be asking.
I assume he's done his research. Maybe he's doing it prior to the birthday, like maybe after 34 days he can.
You can push it off, but celebrate the birthday a few weeks later if you want to have music. But
Birthday Sheni.
Birthday Sheni, yafa מאוד. Tov. Anyways, I think I'm going to have to disappoint him. But I didn't have I got the question last night in the middle of the night. I was sleeping, but I'll answer him today, and I'll say we talked about it in class. And the consensus is, am I right to say that everybody agrees that all the rabbis in training here, everybody agrees they should not listen to music? It's agree. Yisrael, you wanted to ask a question? Yeah?
Okay.
Sure, translate, fine, no problem.
似乎咧嗰個呢段時間咧係講緊一個好嚴肅同埋即係一個哀悼嗰個時間啦，就即係啲人唔聽音樂係因為唔好製造一個好開心嘅氣氛，係咪？
Yeah. Aaron, did you understand the question? Because it's a different Chinese than you.
A few words.
A few words only. Okay, Stephen, please. Yeah.
Say, during this time, because of the stringency of the law of the mourning, so because of the period of the mourning,
and then 其實係嗰啲開心嘅音樂係個例子啫。咁個 key 係咪在於即係避免有啲好開心嘅氣氛出現咧？呢個係一個目標。
Playing happy music or joyful music, it's just an example, but it's also not to create a joyful moment. That's what he said.
Right. I think the examples are weddings. Wedding is a public, joyful celebration. That's what we're trying to avoid. That's the custom from the Gaonic period. Very ancient, 1500-year custom. But beyond that, it's not a specific prohibition against listening in your earphones. I don't know, I understand more precisely what the question is.
The question 係咩咧？就係如果舉個例，如果有人唔係特登嘅，無意中咧製造咗一個 topic， 令到大家個氣氛咧笑得好開心嘅。
If a person create a topic to make everyone happy, make a joyful, happy occasion, a joyful moment. So is it okay?
So as long as you don't have dancing and music, it's good to have parties. It's good to get together, like we said, for an engagement. It's important. It's a mitzvah. If there's a good reason to have a gathering, like I said yesterday, before, I was at a conference. There was a gathering. Hundreds of rabbis. They gathered because that was the most convenient time for them to discuss the issues of education and of teaching. Rabbis from all around the world gathered. So that's a festive occasion. We had a dinner with meat and wine.
Or just Orthodox?
Only Orthodox. Only Orthodox. It was. I think it was mostly modern Orthodox. It was mostly a religious Zionist. But there's a reason to have a gathering, and it was joyous because it was nice to meet people and to see everybody. There's no prohibition as long as there's no music and dancing. They actually had a cappella music, which, as I said, it's a little bit silly, but they were careful not to have instruments. But it was more important. There was a good reason to have this get together. You call it it's a conference. It's not a party, but it's a gathering. There's no prohibition on gatherings, if that's your question. There's no prohibition of getting together and having a good time, as long as you don't dance and have music. It's fine. It's fine to get together and to be joyful. There's no prohibition of being joyful. The minimizing joy, that's more associated with the destruction of the temple in the summertime, in Av, 3 weeks before Tisha B'Av. Then that's an overriding atmosphere where the Jewish people are in mourning. This period of Omer, it's a period of growth. Maybe there's a little bit of seriousness to it, but it's not a sad period. There is a custom to refrain from weddings and haircuts, so we have some symbols of commemoration, but it's not supposed to be a sad period. Okay, does that answer the question a little more clear? Yeah?
Okay. Let me ask. Okay, provision my letter